Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're jumping straight into what is arguably the single most important medical decision you'll ever make for your pet's overall well-being. Whether you just brought home a brand new puppy or kitten, or you've been, kind of putting off scheduling that vet appointment for an older pet, this one is absolutely for you. We're going to break down how a very routine procedure doesn't just change your pet's life, it literally saves it.
Let's kick things off by confronting a frankly staggering number, 8 million. That is the estimated number of dogs and cats entering animal shelters across the United States every single year. It's a massive, almost incomprehensible number, right? But it's not just a data point. It represents a very real, heartbreaking crisis happening in shelters worldwide.
And tragically, the reality is that nearly half of those animals, 50%, will never actually make it out of the shelter system. Now, adopting a pet absolutely saves a life, for sure. But the data makes it abundantly clear that this staggering mortality rate is a massive systemic failure. So the crucial next step that really separates well-meaning owners from truly responsible ones is addressing the root cause of all this.
So here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the overpopulation crisis. Then, the lifelong medical benefits. Third, the behavioral transformation. And finally, we'll tackle the common myths and financial barriers. Okay, part one, the overpopulation crisis. We're confronting the systemic failure and the purebred myth.
There's this really prevalent and honestly dangerous myth out there that purebred pets are somehow magically exempt from the shelter crisis and therefore they shouldn't be altered. But the reality on the ground is drastically different. Shelters right now are absolutely overflowing with unwanted purebred dogs and cats. So maintaining an animal's purebred status is never a valid excuse to contribute to an already saturated system. Because here's the hard truth. Every single litter born, whether they're a mixed breed or a purebred, takes a potential home away from an animal currently sitting on death row.
Moving on to part two, lifelong medical benefits. We're talking about actively preventing fatal conditions in your pet. When we break down the medical side of things, the serious conditions we're trying to prevent become crystal clear. For female pets, spaying before their first heat cycle nearly eliminates the risk of mammary gland tumors. It also completely prevents pyometra. If you're not familiar, those are severe uterine infections that are frequently fatal and require incredibly expensive emergency surgery. And for our male pets, neutering entirely wipes out the risk of testicular cancer and significantly drops the incidence of prostate disease. We are literally talking about wiping out terminal conditions with one routine everyday surgery. But the crucial point to remember here is that it's not just about cancer prevention. The actual act of reproduction itself is highly risky. Pregnancy and birth place a massive, massive physical toll on the mother. It's an event fraught with potential complications. Things like emergency C-sections are incredibly traumatic for the animal going through it, not to mention they are a massive financial burden for you as the owner.
That brings us to part three, behavioral transformation, curing the dangerous instinct to roam.
The difference in an animal's quality of life before and after is like night and day. Intact animals are driven by these intense, overpowering, hormonal urges to seek out a mate. And that instinct is so strong, it leads to the incredibly dangerous habit of escaping. Pets on the prowl will obsessively dig under fences, they'll dart out of open doors the second you're not looking, and that puts them at a super high risk of getting permanently lost or worse, becoming victims of fatal traffic accidents. But when a pet is altered, that frustrating biological urge is entirely removed. That means your pet happily and safely stays right at home where they belong.
And honestly, those behavioral benefits continue right inside your house too. If you've been dealing with frustrating habits, altering your animal is often the cure you've been looking for. The surgery dramatically reduces territorial marking. It stops tomcats from spraying your walls. It lowers aggression and stops dogs from constantly mounting your guests. And this applies whether it's a dog, a cat, or even aggressive tendencies in ferrets and rabbits. It lowers their overall stress levels, making them vastly calmer and just so much more receptive to your training. And finally, part four, myths and financial barriers. Let's dismantle human guilt and that cost deterrent.
A lot of owners actually delay this vital surgery out of a misplaced sense of guilt. We tend to project our own human emotions onto our pets. Consider this basic biological fact. Pets do not possess a psychological attachment to their reproductive organs. They really don't. They do not mourn the loss of the ability to parent. If a pet never experiences the biological drive of copulation, they simply aren't going to miss it. They don't feel less manly or less feminine after the procedure. Your dog will wake up, continue his normal habits, and be completely oblivious to the absence of his anatomy. Which perfectly leads us to a core psychological truth about our furry companions.
Animals live entirely in the present moment. They aren't sitting around worrying about building a family legacy. So, releasing them from these constant unfulfilled hormonal drives actually gives them a much more peaceful, contented psychological reality. It really is a kindness to free them from all that built-up frustration. Now, all of this naturally leads us to the most common practical barrier owners face. You might be listening to this, totally agreeing with the medical and behavioral evidence, but a lingering question remains. Can I actually afford this? That perceived financial barrier is, for sure, the primary reason people delay.
Well, the absolutely incredible news is that cost should never be a deterrent. The veterinary community, along with shelters and rescue groups, are deeply invested in making these surgeries accessible to literally everyone. There are countless organizations out there offering heavily discounted vouchers, community coupons, and even completely free spay and neuter clinics. The resources are out there specifically to remove this financial hurdle for you.
To really put that cost into perspective, let's contrast the two financial realities. On one hand, you have a remarkably insignificant upfront investment for a clinic voucher or the routine surgery. Contrast that against the alternative, the financially devastating reality of paying for an emergency C-section or terminal cancer treatments later down the line, or even just repairing the property damage caused by a frustrated, destructive, intact pet. It is such a small investment right now for an entire lifetime of health and financial stability. To wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. Spaying or neutering is about so much more than just population control. Though, of course, saving animals from shelter overcrowding is absolutely vital. But it's really a proactive, scientifically backed step toward a healthier, calmer, and much longer life for your companion. The behavioral and medical benefits vastly outweigh any temporary inconveniences. So are you ready to take this ultimate act of love and responsibility for your pet? Thank you so much for joining me for this deep dive, and let's keep working together to build a more informed, responsible pet-loving community.